Hello, and welcome to our first episode of Fully Expressed live stream. So, today I'm going to be talking to you about my personal journey, my personal story, and some of the struggles and obstacles that I've had to overcome in my life. So, without any hesitation, let's get started. To truly understand my story, I need to go back to the beginning. And everything for me in what I've overcome and what I've had to process was all a result of beliefs and some traumatic experiences that happened to me as a young girl. And what the last 3 years of deep healing and self discovery has really taught me is that everything that shows up in your current reality is more often than not direct linked to your childhood experience where you've developed some sort of belief system or you've experienced some sort of neglect in your feelings or perhaps trauma that you've had to process. And my story is about that, filled with resilience and transformation. It really commenced in the most unlikely of places, a hospital room. I was 3 years old when I began my journey, and it ultimately led me to discover my profound connection between who I am now and who I was then as a 3-year-old girl. I was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia at the age of 3, a diagnosis that I obviously overcome, and I am able to share my story about it today. And it wasn't until a couple of years ago that I really started to reconnect to this experience, because I will explain as I go further into my story how that affected me and created some challenges in my life. Now, the irony is that I don't have any negative memories about this period in my life. Most people would expect my recollections to be of pain, fear, and suffering, but my childlike perspective was completely different. To me, I remember it being a time of fun, play, and joy, but there wasn't any suffering or pain or anything like that, which seems a little bit odd. And now that I really think about it, it makes so much sense. So it's almost as if I had wiped this memory from my mind and my body. And what I realized in my healing journey is that this was just a protective mechanism. And I actually disassociated myself from my body, from my emotions, in order to stop myself from having to process the pain around, perhaps it was around, dealing with having cancer and the symptoms and the side effects of how that makes you feel, but also how it makes other people feel, how it made my parents feel. And I think there is a two-pronged approach to this, because I feel as though I was protecting myself by disassociating, but I also feel as though I was also trying to put on this facade of being strong and showing that I'm okay, despite everything else that's going on around me and how other people are affected by it. I put on this brave front that it's not affecting me, I'm not feeling anything, and I totally just disconnected. So the disassociation was my subconscious defense mechanism, and it shielded me from emotional and physical pain, which I was too young to process or to even understand. It was my mind's way of preserving my innocence and sheltering me from the harsh realities of sickness and pain that my young heart and my body couldn't actually grasp. And so, as I look back on on this chapter of my life, I recognize the courage that a 3-year-old scared little girl, little Carla, I call her, actually possessed in that moment to make that conscious or subconscious decision to protect herself and to be strong and to be brave and to put on, this brave face for everybody else and to try and uplift the positivity of others. And this really brings me a lot of strength today as I revisit this experience. And it does make me a little bit emotional because for so long, I think I disconnected from that version of little Carla because I didn't really understand her. And what I didn't realize is that this strength would come to define my journey, although I didn't realize it being a 3-year-old girl. And I think I also forgot that I had this strength and I had this bravery and I had this courage until writing this story, until really going back over these parts of my life where I look back with pride and amazement. And as I grew older, it really became evident to me that my resilience wasn't just about facing illness in my early years. Obviously, I had adopted a survival mechanism which it disassociated me from my body, from being able to feel anything negative or anything painful that I couldn't process. And it was as if almost my body and emotions were totally separate to my physical body, my mental body. It's as if I completely wiped this experience because the form of disassociation means that you are disconnecting. You are disconnecting from certain forms, emotions, or hurt from an experience, and it is almost like it is suppressing it somewhere or just avoiding it altogether. So the dissociation really served as a shield, protecting me from the overwhelming emotional storms that brewed within me. And what happened is, because I chose to unconsciously avoid pain and process pain, which was my mind's way of preserving my innocence and safeguarding me, the harsh reality is that my tender heart couldn't comprehend. And what I understand is how it would affect me later on in life and present a number of challenges in my adult years because I disconnected from my emotions. So when my emotions would come up, I wouldn't understand why they were coming up. I wouldn't understand how to regulate them or control them. And I wouldn't understand how I needed to express how I was feeling to other people in order to have my emotional needs met. I didn't understand any of that. So as I navigated the waters of turning into an adolescent girl, the emotional suppression continued, and it became this ticking time bomb that would always haunt me in my adult years as I went about my day, whether I was at work or whether I was out with my friends. And to explain this, I have to understand this, I have to explain that growing up, I experienced what I thought was quite a strict upbringing. I had a strong religious background, and I was the eldest of three siblings, and I'd always taken on the responsibility of this motherly role, which came quite natural to me. But as a 12 or 13-year-old girl, I was doing the chores and looking after my siblings when my parents were away at work. And at the age of 13, my parents chose to separate, which really changed a lot for me personally and also my relationship with my siblings. I didn't understand how to process what was the emotion that I was feeling from my parents' separation. And it was really hard because I had always been closer to my dad growing up in my younger years. And I was faced with the choice of which parent to live with. And I found myself being torn between my parents and really feeling guilty for if I said that I wanted to live with my dad, how that would affect my mum. And but because I wasn't able to express this emotion or this way that I was feeling or verbalize anything, I just left it inside me. And the basically a decision was made for me because I didn't express how I was feeling and how perhaps to navigate this. A decision was made for me because obviously I was 13. I was sent away to live with someone else, which really added to my emotional trauma and suppression. And then at the age of 14, I decided to leave school because it just felt different. It felt like I wasn't really on the same level as my friends. I felt more mature, and so I made the decision and I started working full time at my first job, which was Hungry Jack's. I had secured myself a hospitality traineeship, which I am so grateful for now looking back because it taught me a lot of the principles of cooking. And I went to cooking school for 2 years, and I really developed a love of cooking, and I still do to this day. But what that point or what that experience of me sort of immersing myself into a world of automatically being a grown up at the age of 14, I was able to make decisions for myself. My parents didn't tell me what to do or how to do it. And at age 14, I was able to do all of the things that I wasn't able to do growing up because they weren't allowed, they weren't accepted. And I had never celebrated Christmas, I had never celebrated a birthday, I had never, gone to a party with my friends. And so I started to do all of these things. And the more that I started to do all of these things, the more that I discovered and really turned to alcohol, which became my chosen form to have fun, to let some steam off and relax. And it became a way for me to mask my confusion, my emotions, the anger and the sadness that I was storing within my body because I couldn't process it and I couldn't express it. And the more I drank, the deeper I plunged into this realm of disconnection from myself, where the boundaries of my true self and my party self really blurred, and this version of me sort of overtook who I was. This party girl, party Carla would come out obviously with the addition of alcohol, and she started to take over. She started to show up, and the real little Carla started to shrink down inside. And this became normal. This became my new normal. As I went through my life, you know, right up until the age of 21, I was working, and it was basically work, party, sleep, repeat. And it would just continue. And until I decided at age 22 that I needed a change of scenery. And so I embarked on this journey and decided to travel overseas on the hopes of finding a new beginning, perhaps finding myself, or just finding some sort of fulfillment and happiness within. And at the time, I was studying fashion design, and I had become fixated with this college, this world renowned college in Florence, in Italy. And so I made that my first destination. Before traveling around the world with my mum, we ended up in Italy, and it was the second most bravest thing I think I've ever done, because I was 22 at the time, so I was still young. I was still, inexperienced in the world. And it was a scary thing to be on your own in a foreign country. And I remember my mum leaving me at the train station, and she had put me up in a hotel for a couple of nights just until I could find my feet. And I was about to, when she left, I made my way to go and look at this apartment. And I was really nervous, obviously, meeting a stranger in a foreign country, but they spoke English and they were lovely. And that's where I ended up living for the year that I spent in Florence. But I got caught up in the excitement and the whirlwind of partying and adventure, and the allure of, going out and being out with your friends that I'd made at this college. It just seemed to go hand in hand. But what seemed to happen is I seemed to lean more into party Carla and less into what little Carla or what true Carla really wanted, which was to study fashion and was to learn and was to progress with my skills. But I pushed that away and I put party Carla first. And I think I did that because it seemed like the more fun choice at the time. It seemed almost like the choice for me to be accepted within my friends at the time, because Party Carla was created in order for me to fit in order for me to be liked, and in order for me to be accepted by others. So, of course, I would naturally say yes to going out to nightclubs and, events and things like this. And eventually I started to put this as a priority over my true self and what I truly wanted. But after a year, I struggled to find permanent work because my Italian, albeit quite good, wasn't 100% fluent enough to find a permanent job where I could sustain that. So I decided to move to London, where I spent 5 years in the busy metropolis. And I finally got my qualifications in pattern making and a master's in fashion design and entrepreneurship. I was so proud. But I was also back in this environment where little Carla was ready to play. Sorry, not little Carla, party Carla. And the bustling nightlife, the people, the friendships that I made were too easily convincing, and I was in pursuit of constantly seeking external pleasures, which obviously was created by this disconnection in me because I was searching everywhere else. I was searching within this party lifestyle to try and find some sort of inner happiness and fulfillment. And despite me looking like I was living life to the fullest and having fun, I was still feeling really disconnected from my true self. And it was a period of continued suppression where I'd allowed my emotions to be buried deep within me over all these years, 22 years of my life. And then on top of that, I had added alcohol, which had become my vice almost, as a means to mask the emotional turmoil that I couldn't bear to confront. And it only continued to hinder my disconnection to myself and began affecting me even more. I remember being in London and I would be out after going out clubbing, and I would remember myself being sat on a sidewalk with tears streaming down my face and, makeup smeared and just obviously feeling really awful and really low. But I didn't understand why. I didn't understand what was bringing on these emotions. Now I obviously now know what it was, and it was the continued suppression of me not being able to process or connect to my emotions or being so disconnected from my body. But at the time, I really was like a really full bottle of soft drink, and my emotions were sitting right at the top of that bottle. And what seemed to happen is the more alcohol that I would add to the bottle, the more the bottle would start to erupt and overflow. And my personal relationships at this time were really fleeting, from one connection to another, be it a fling or a one night stand. I was a young girl sort of exploring myself, and I put this external validation into other people. I thought that if I could find someone that understood me and that loved me and that made me feel special, that I would feel fulfillment. And so I would seek and search out, new relationships, but constantly end up feeling unfulfilled. And I couldn't understand why. I still felt incomplete. I felt empty. And as the years rolled on, I realized that the self-destructive patterns that I had adopted from this feeling of disconnection and needing to seek validation and approval and love and, acceptance were getting me nowhere. And I still felt as though I was seeking and I was searching something, though I was still felt like I had to keep going. And although the sense of emptiness persisted within me, and I continued to deny and suppress my emotions, after several years of being in London, and I think knowing that my time had sort of come to an end, I decided to return back to Adelaide, Australia, which is where I grew up. And I felt as though I was missing. It was almost as though I had this fear of missing out for all of my friends back home in Adelaide, because obviously I had spent 5 years, 6 years abroad. And I'd come home a couple times in between. And I think I was really feeling like I needed my friends and I needed my family, and I didn't want to miss out anymore. And so I really thought that coming home and having that reconnection with my family and friends would really light me up and would fulfill me again. But surprise, surprise, it did not. Well, initially I thought, I missed my family and I missed my friends, but my behaviors didn't change. In fact, they only got worse. So I sought more solace in partying. I drifted further away from little Carla and my true self. And the demons I'd been running from now seemed to chase me with even greater fervor, even greater stamina. And I remember a particular instance where I was at a party and I could feel an energy. I could feel this energy, of darkness, or, I could see into the darkness, almost something that was trying to communicate with me. And I would start to communicate back with it. And that was really scary. It's something that something, excuse me. It's something that I've been, throat is controlling. Yeah. So what I was going to say is, it's as though I was trying to communicate with my own inner demons. This is what I'm trying to get out. Doesn't want me to. And yeah, it's almost as though when you're in a low vibration state, it pulls you deeper into that state. And I was delving quite heavily into drug substances and fueled with alcohol to escape. But what I didn't realize is I was escaping to this place that I thought was better, but it was actually worse. It was actually, pulling me into the depths of darkness within myself. And it really started to affect a lot of my personal friendships back home. And I started to feel really a lot of shame, a lot of guilt about, my behaviors and how I was acting, how dismissive I was of some people, my mother especially. I'm sorry for hurting you during that time of my life. But I think what I realize now is it didn't matter where I was, because I was always trying to run. I was constantly seeking something better in a different destination, thinking that a destination would bring me this new beginning, or it would bring me what I was seeking. But what I was doing is I was just relocating my same self with the same behaviors to a new city and just, repeating the same patterns that I had always been repeating my entire life. And so it almost felt like a double-edged sword, a temporary escape when I was drinking and partying. But then when I wasn't, it's like I had to face the reality, which was even worse because of my behaviors and how I potentially acted when I was under the influence. But I would never remember. I would never remember what I did the night before, what I said, who I said it to. So it really started to affect a lot of my relationships with my family and my friends, especially, who loved me. But I was pushing them away because I thought that perhaps they were going to end my party Carla vibes. So I pushed them away. And what I didn't realize is obviously that they were there to support me and to love me, but I didn't see that at the time, and I didn't understand that was what I needed at the time. And, I really look back on this time of my life where, it seems that I had gone wild and I was just really enjoying life, which I was, don't get me wrong. I definitely was. I was wild and free and no one could tame me, but I wasn't happy. So it's not the same as that sort of wild woman archetype that we understand today. But I look back on it as a reminder, and I look back on that stage of my life, which was a lot of it, probably 14 to 33. And I give that version of me love. I send her love and healing, compassion and acceptance and understanding for where she was in that mode of survival and just trying to navigate life, and with this, depth of despair of not really being able to connect with herself. I really feel more connected to her now than I have my whole life. But the story continues. So be it as it may, this part of myself, you would think that eventually it would come to an end. And as I write this, I always wonder why I didn't recognize this continued self-destructive behavior sooner. But sometimes we're not meant to until we're ready for it. And we are totally aware of ourselves. And it really takes us to hit rock bottom before we start to take notice and start to create change within ourselves. But the thing is, we have to want to do this. And I literally thought to myself, I'm having way too much fun. In my head, I thought that at least. And I didn't want the party to stop. So I moved the party to Melbourne in 2011. Again, holding the belief that a fresh start in a new city would be the key to my happiness, and possibly after burning a few bridges in Adelaide, I could start anew. And, I didn't know anyone. I had one friend when I moved to Melbourne, and she gratefully hosted me in her house with her partner for the first couple of months until I started to find my feet and find my own path. And obviously the vicious cycle that I had been trapped in of avoid anything to do with emotions, anything to do with connection, really left me in a far worse state this time around. And I started to really become uncertain about my identity. And this was the first time that I'd had to search for work since returning back to Australia from London and Italy. And I had this qualification of a master's. I knew how to do pattern making. I knew the techniques and the processes and how to make clothes. But my search for a job that I thought matched my qualifications never really came to fruition. And I really struggled. This really affected my identity because I put so much belief in that I was going to be a fashion designer, or I was going to be a fashion producer making clothes. And I really held this belief for a long time. Since I was a little girl, it was almost like a dream of mine. And it's almost as if this dream came crashing down because my qualifications that I'd gotten abroad weren't really accepted or weren't really what I needed in order to allow me to find this dream job that I've been searching of my whole life. And so I embodied and embraced the party girl to drown this uncertainty about my identity and to drown my emotions and how I felt about that. And I believed that this way of being was a sort of like a default mechanism of healing. Like, when you don't feel good or you have a stressful day, you might light up a cigarette or you might pour a glass of wine. I really believed that this was my way of releasing, stress and emotions and things like that, but it wasn't really. And throughout this journey or this time that I was in Melbourne, I hopped from one job to another, trying to find the path for me, trying to find this, fulfillment that I was still searching for. And I really had put all of my belief in thinking that my fulfillment was going to come to me externally through my job or, what I did for a living. And I eventually found a job in 2015 after having a number of sort of jobs that I went from one to the other. In 2015, I found a full-time job as a travel agent, and I literally thought that this was it. This was what I was supposed to be doing because I had such a deep passion for travel and wealth, and I had so much experience from my time of living abroad. And it seemed like all the pieces of the puzzle started to fit. And for a little bit, it did offer me this sense of purpose and focus of my energy, and it allowed me to start to feel good about myself because I was providing this experience and sharing what I knew about these places that I'd been to, and allowing other people to receive my feedback and go to this place for dinner. It would be amazing, or do these experiences that I had because you will really enjoy them. And for a little bit of time, it felt good. I felt happy. But the culture was the wrong culture for me because it condoned or sort of embodied this work hard, play hard culture which, as we know, is something I knew how to do the best. And my sort of a dedication to my job seemed to fail away, and my party lifestyle seemed to consume me even more. And the high pressure culture of this corporate industry only intensified my struggles because I had to approach confronting situations which I had never done before, because obviously I'd always run away from them. I had to control my emotions, and allow them not to spill over into my workplace. I had to keep myself together, basically. And I did it for 7 years. I did this, but eventually it got to a point where I found myself being bullied. I found myself in this victim mentality because it was affecting my work. It was affecting how I was able to complete tasks, or how I was unable to complete tasks. I wasn't able to manage my mood swings, and completely incapable of controlling my emotions, to the point that I remember having been under performance review and trying to be able to express myself, to stand up and fight for myself and fight for my job. But instead, I just remember being this ball of spilling uncontrollable tears that would just flow down my face. And I couldn't contain any of it. I couldn't express any of it. I couldn't do anything except for just sit there in pain, knowing that I couldn't do anything, and allow the tears to fall down my face. And this was my rock bottom. This was me really feeling trapped and stuck, because I started to feel like I was a victim, or I was a target. And it was a really crucial turning point in my journey. And I am thankful that this was the end, or the pivoting point of my journey, because at this point in my life, I really had no honor, no respect, no value, or no love for myself, that I sort of could embody to give me the strength to stand up and fight. But this was a profound moment for me, and it was the pivoting point in my life. It was also the pivoting point for a lot of people, because this was year 2019, 2020, and this was the point in time which COVID really took over and started to affect the world. I remember trying to hold on to my corporate job just before COVID hit. We had bought an apartment with my partner, myself and Michael. We had bought an apartment in the city. I wanted to be close to the city, because obviously it was easy for me to get to work. Here I am thinking that I'm still going to have a job after COVID. And we bought this apartment. We were waiting for the finance to go through, and it was almost a week before finance was due. We got a call from the bank saying finance was declined because of my job. And then the very next day, I also discovered that my job, I'd been made to step down from my job due to obviously the travel industry being probably the first industry to go with COVID, because the whole world stopped, flights stopped, businesses stopped, and it put a lot of people out of jobs, obviously, and I was one of them. But I still, I think I was on some sort of payment package from the government, but I was still connected to my employer, my workspace, and I needed to get out of that environment in order to satisfy the bank to be able to get a home loan so that we could continue our search for purchasing our home, our first home together. And so a month afterwards, I resigned from my job, and the freedom that gave me, and just that feeling of being able to let that chapter of my life go was really rewarding. It was a blessing in disguise. And I started working from home. I started working for a smaller company from home in the space of, well, not in my home, but in someone else's home, in Michael's brother's home, who they put us up in Sunbury at the time. And I was able to really start to focus on myself. And I was able to start the journey of reconnection back to myself. And it was at this time that I realized the severe magnitude of my emotional suppression that I had really pushed down deep inside of myself for so long and avoided for all of these years. And so in 2020, I decided that I would wholeheartedly immerse myself into a soul journey of healing. So I left my work from home job, and for the next 2 years, I just focused on myself. And I am always eternally grateful that I had the space, the time, and I had a supportive partner who was there to encourage me to make this journey, even though I felt guilty about my contribution, my financial obligation to him and to our house that we bought in that year. But I knew that this is something that I had to do. I knew that this was time for me to confront my shadow self, to confront my self-destructive behaviors, and to really allow myself to bring up and connect to these emotions and these experiences that I had been running from my whole life. And I confronted my shadows that had haunted me for so long. I wholeheartedly engaged in several healing programs. The biggest one that I did, which I am always grateful, was Step Into Your Light Worker with Brittany Van Gestel. If you're listening, thank you. This really was a huge part of my healing process because it showed me how disconnected I was, and it really allowed me also to start to understand that I potentially had a purpose, and I think I focused perhaps on the purpose a little bit. I had the intentions when I went into this healing program of thinking that I would do this program and then I would become a healer, and then I would obviously make an income that way, and that would fulfill me. But what I didn't realize is how much it would change me, how much it would heal me. and how much it would reconnect me to myself. And it took me a lot of time to really go through this process. It took me 2 years of deep discovery and inward reflection to undo the years and years, decades of suppression and disconnection and conditioning, low self worth, low self esteem issues that I had somehow adopted. And during this journey, I was journaling a lot, and I remember writing in an intention that I had in my diary, my journal, and it was to the universe. I prayed to the universe to please show me a way to make a living creatively that was fulfilling and that served my greater good. Because after 2 years, I thought, I'm ready now to at least start to find work, start that search process. And this intention, I had always had a fascination to Reiki, to experiencing Reiki. And I wrote down one day something, when you're going through this journey of self-discovery, it's all about connecting to the things that make you happy and the things that light you up. And one of these things was Reiki. I was like, I really love Reiki. I really would like to understand the principles of Reiki and how to use it for myself. And so I also believed that in a world of COVID, perhaps when, your future is uncertain, that it would be a good way for me to potentially be able to make a self-sustained income and support my partner. But it turned into something far greater than I could ever have understood at that time, because it became this continuation of my transformational journey, and it became a pathway to my discovery of my energy and a reconnection of my identity. I uncovered my true desires and I learned to reconnect with my emotions in a way that didn't feel scary, didn't feel confronting. And as I was sort of, going about this journey, every week or so, I remember having, these huge realizations that would come to me. And this was because I was starting to clear things. I was starting to clear these suppressed emotions and this suppressed energy that I'd kept in my body for so long. And the messages and the realizations were just things falling back into alignment with my true self and back less away from, this party girl persona who suppressed everything and avoided everything and ran away from everything. I was falling back in alignment with my body, my energy, my spirit, and I was feeling more connected than I ever had before. It was a remarkable journey of learning, of growth, of expansion, and it allowed me to move from feeling uncertain about my abilities. I discovered my gifts, my soul gifts in this process by connecting to this healing energy or this healing modality. Allowed me to awaken my soul gifts in conjunction with the work, the deep work that I had done in Step Into Your Light Worker. And together, this showed me that I was able to heal myself. I was able to also heal others using Reiki energy, but I was able to feel other people's energy. So after years of not feeling anything, it's almost as though all of my feelings came rushing back all at once, all in this discovery of learning this modality. It's like my energy started to come online and I started to feel what people were feeling and I could explain to them what they were feeling. And that really blew my mind. So much so that I discovered I wanted to do more of this because Reiki became the catalyst for me to change. Although I was using, had a number, it became a tool, just became this powerful tool that enabled me to understand and to regulate my emotions and to embark on this path of healing. And it transformed my life so much. Looking back, I would never have thought that I would be sitting here telling you that I am now, a fully qualified Reiki master who is able to teach other people how to heal themselves, how to find themselves, and how to transform themselves. If I had have said that to myself so many years ago to Party Carla, she probably would have laughed at me and thought, there's no way ever that, you would be doing that. But I am far less of a party girl these days. I am more of a homebody girl. I'm more of a gardening, get out in the garden and grow my own vegetables girl. So the change and the possibilities that are available to you is something that you potentially might doubt in yourself now. You might doubt that you have this, thing that you've always wanted to do. You've always wanted to, it's almost like a bucket list thing. This is what Reiki was for me. Reiki was a bucket list thing. And through this journey of healing and huge self rediscovery and really gaining the awareness into who I am, why I am the way I am, and shining light on these behaviors of who I used to be really is something that I thought I would continue my entire life going through it, not knowing. And now knowing what I know, everything makes so much sense. Everything just feels aligned. Everything, it's almost as if I don't have to doubt myself anymore. I don't have to seek this search for external validation and acceptance because what I had to do was accept myself. What I had to do was heal myself, love myself, value myself. And through doing this, I have come home to myself, to who I really am. And through my own healing journey and experiences now, I am here to guide others on this path of self-awareness, of healing, of emotional freedom from the experiences or the traumas that your body is holding on to, or that you are holding on to, perhaps unconsciously knowing that you were doing that, and feeling as though you are in this repetitive cycle, destructive cycle, or cycle where things don't feel good, or things don't feel like they're going your way, or you're having to avoid things, avoid people, avoid dealing with things, or avoid really being honest with yourself that you deserve better, that you are worthy of more, and that you can create your dream life and the things that you want in it. You can be this version of yourself that you want to be, that's confident and fully expressed, that's connected to your true desires, and really own who you are, so that no one can take that away from you. No one can say to you, bring something up from your past where it's going to cause an emotional reaction, and a decline or a spiral back into these old destructive behaviors, or this old version of who you used to be. And so I am really just wanting to share that wherever you are in your journey or your life story, whatever that looks like for you, there is always the opportunity to change it. And I wish that I really enlisted the help of coaches and healers more in my journey, because I felt quite isolated in my healing journey. Aside from, the healing program that I did with Brittany, or with learning Reiki, I felt when I went to these courses, and there was a community of women and people who were in a similar situation to myself, that I felt like almost more connected to myself, because of that connection that I felt to other people who could relate to me, could understand me, because for so long I'd been trying to understand myself. And it was almost as if this kind of just cemented that feeling that I needed to hear that I wasn't alone in this process, in my journey, and to have someone hold space for me in that moment, and sort of guide me along my journey and my process. And to this day, I am still using Brittany as a mentor and as a coach to elevate me. And I think that we always need that gentle kick up the bum, or that gentle sort of push to make ourselves become accountable for whatever it is that we are trying to manifest, or call in, or create. You always sort of, it's like a personal trainer. You work with someone when you want to increase your fitness. And so I look at this as a similar scenario, where your emotional fitness and your healing fitness is always going to be something that continues throughout your life. It's not something that I think is ever complete, because we are always learning more about ourselves. And if you think about it, really, I've been doing this healing journey for 3 or 4 years, but I am 40 years old. So for 36 of those years, I have to sort of go back and unlearn all of the things that I had adopted during those 36 years. And I'm only 4 years in, but this is going to be something that I continue to do. And I think of healing as a recommitment to myself, a recommitment to myself that I am going to stay connected. I'm going to ensure that I am fully expressed. I'm going to always make time and space for my emotions. I'm never going to judge myself for the way I feel, and I'm going to allow myself to feel anything that's painful, that's hurtful, and everything else in between. So I'm going to leave this here because I feel like this has been a timely journey of me delving into this story, and I hope that it has been something that has been enlightening for you. It's certainly been a pleasure for me to be able to share this with you, because I believe that in sharing my story and sharing my truth with you, it is about me really stepping into my power. And I hope that it will also empower you to create the change and the transformation that you want to see in yourself. Thank you so much. Bye.